unfiltered discussions, unexpected guests. No topic is off limits, from sex and relationships to the human condition, personal anxieties, and so much more. The only talk show of its kind in the world. This is The Last Show with David Cooper.
We got a lot to cover. My cat's doing well. Let me tell you about tonight's show. In 10 minutes' time, an artist making famous politicians' faces out of meat, and the internet loves her. And why choose Mortadella to represent Elon Musk? That one should be a lot of fun. After that, we'll zoom from meat on canvas out into the cosmos to the second closest star from Earth, where 4 small planets have been discovered. Seems like everywhere we look in the galaxy, more planets, and these ones are small, smaller than Earth. What could be on them? Could they have life on them? Find out more about that halfway through the hour. Lots to cover. Let's jump in.
Want to be part of The Last Show with David Cooper? Call us and join the conversation. 1-888-505-6644.
Gather near. Take a seat beside the campfire, because I've got a classic tale to tell you of man versus nature. Well, specifically man's nature to poop, and then forget about it on the moon. We go all the way out to outer space. Well, not outer, but, lunar orbit, because back in the Apollo days when astronauts were heroes and also just dudes in diapers, NASA sent some very brave folks to the moon. That is, unless you believe conspiracy theories, which I do not. The astronauts brought food, water, science equipment, and dreams. And like any good house guests overstaying their welcome, they left behind 96 bags of feces, urine, and vomit. Disgusting! But that's right, the moon, our big romantic rock in the sky, possibly made out of cheese, has also become a cosmic porta potty. Now, the astronauts did it for noble reasons, you see. They had to make room in their spacecraft for moon rocks to bring home and study. And when it came time for the return flight to launch back off of the lunar surface, they needed to shed some weight. So they looked around and thought, on the one hand, we can keep historic samples of lunar geology, or we can keep Buzz's Thursday dump. And just like that, the worst kind of moon littering was born. Now, 50-something years later, NASA's back to the moon with a brand new, exciting mission. It's not to walk on the moon. It's not to build a base. No, they're offering $3 million for this mission to anyone who can clean up that ancient astronaut excrement. Honestly, it's the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard. We finally get back to the moon, but we're coming back to clean up after ourselves. The project is titled Luna Recycle Challenge, which sounds like a kid's educational cartoon or a very bad techno album or something, but it's serious business. NASA's looking for a way to turn those bags of what I can only call space trail mix into something a little more useful, like water or fertilizer or even lunar construction materials. That's right, they want to turn into gold, or at least turn it into buildings, which metaphorically is what most housing developers do anyway. Now, before you get too excited, applications just closed to submit with what you want to do with it and how you want to do it. Scientists, engineers, startups, universities, and probably some dude in his garage with a suspicious number of PVC pipes all submitted proposals. And there were 2 categories of such proposals: actual working prototypes and digital twins, which are computer simulations, which I'm pretty sure is just code for we didn't actually build anything, but trust us, it's amazing on paper and even better on the computer. Now, NASA says they're focused on sustainable space exploration, which is a very elegant way of saying we're going back to the moon, but this time with a compost bin. And if we're going to live on the moon long term, we can't just keep flinging our poop into craters like it's a Roman bathhouse. Eventually, someone's going to step in something, so recycling early seems like a good idea. And let's not forget, it isn't just about cleaning up. It's about resourcefulness, recycling, reusing, reducing, innovation. It's about taking the most human of byproducts and saying, you know what, maybe this could power a toaster. That, my friends, is optimism. That's space hope. That's science. And it's our duty to do it. See what I did there? Duty? Yeah, you're welcome. In the next few weeks, NASA will review all the entries, all the proposals, and select the most promising ideas. The winners will get fame and fortune. The losers go back to explaining at dinner parties that, yes, they really did spend 8 months designing a poop-powered greenhouse. But hey, That's science. It's not always sexy. Sometimes it's a literal bag of, well, you know. So if you're out there listening and you've got a great idea for turning bodily fluids into moon bricks, congrats, you're already more prepared for the future than 99% of us. Because whether we like it or not, the future is recycled, the future is sustainable, and the future apparently smells like the leftovers and bodily functions of a 1971 astronaut. Ever wake up in the morning, look into the mirror, and think to yourself, you know who's missing from the trading card market? Me! Not dragons, not anime teens with trust issues, not baseball players, just you in a cardigan holding a bowl of soup. Well, in one small town in Japan, the dream of becoming a heroic collectible card has come true for every regular, very wrinkly, very oddly powerful man. Now, I know what you're thinking. Japan's done it again. But this isn't robots. This isn't toilets that sing. No, this is a trading card game where the stars are middle-aged and elderly men from a local community. Trading cards of old dudes. And I'm not talking like silver fox old dudes, Instagram daddies. I'm talking regular old bald spots, suspenders, and the vague smell of an old folks' home. This phenomenon, and yes, I will be calling it a phenomenon because weird little miracle felt too judgmental, is happening at a community center in a small town in Japan where local kids have ditched Pokemon for what I can only describe as Poke Pops or Papa, Poke Papa. That's right, the hottest card on the playground right now isn't a Charizard. It's an all-arounder 68-year-old ex-prison guard who now volunteers and probably also makes a mean rice cracker. Kids are obsessed with these regular, everyday, older Joe cards. They're tracking stats, memorizing abilities, even lining up to get autographs from their favorite dude. It might be the first time in history a 10-year-old has said the words, "I want Mr. Honda to sign my card. He's my favorite 74-year-old retired fire brigade chief." And they want that signature without involving a therapist or some sort of fire insurance for their parents. Now, these cards all come with powers, real-world powers. For example, Mr. Honda, former firefighter, can apparently deal 200 damage with his super guard move, which I assume just means he yells at you until you eat a vegetable. And then there's Plasma Conductor, a former electrician-type card featuring a grinning man who can allegedly fix any electrical appliance, which in my house would make him the most powerful person alive, but I digress. Now, this all started thanks to the local community council, where someone had the brilliant, mildly unhinged idea to turn their neighborhood dads into collectible legends. The goal, kind of a noble one, help bridge the gap between kids and the older generation. Because why talk to Grandpa when you can battle with him against your friends? And the plan worked. Not only are the kids collecting these cards, they're attending community events just to meet the actual men pictured on them. I can't even get my nephew to text me back, and these kids are asking for a guy who teaches soba noodle classes or autographs. I mean, it's adorable, it's wholesome, and maybe kind of oddly terrifying. Now, battling with the cards, that's something the kids took into their own hands. They eventually started doing it and arguing over who could beat up who, like some sort of geriatric version of Street Fighter, but then the town council weighed in and they made rules. Real rules. The game evolved. Now, let me tell you, nothing screams fun like shiny laminated cards of a man who volunteers at a recycling center every Tuesday. And get this, not all cards are created equal. The more rare ones, those are for people who contributed more to society. That's right, good deeds now equal holographic upgrades and card rarity, which means somewhere in Japan, a retired man may be pulling weeds at a playground thinking, I hope this turns me into a better card. Now, the cards are handmade, only available at a local center. A 3-pack costs about 100 yen, which is like less than $1. That's the kind of pricing that says we value community. And also, we have no idea what a kid would pay for a playing card of a local elderly person. So while the rest of the world is stuck collecting soulless, AI-generated crypto tokens and monsters, this town is teaching kids to look up to real people. Kind, ordinary men with lives, skills, and cholesterol medication. If that's not heartwarming, I don't know what is. Unless, of course, they introduce a divorced but trying card, in which case I'd like to humbly nominate myself. Up next, amazing viral art made out of the most ridiculous material. I'm David Cooper. This is The Last Show.
turning headline news into punchline gold. 5 nights a week. The Last Show with David Cooper.
People have called our next guest an artistic giant, a creative genius, a once-in-a-generation visionary. Most of those people have been me. Today on the show, meet, mockery, and Mortadella. How's that for alliteration? Guelph, Ontario-based artist Barbara Salsberg Mathews is turning world leaders into deli platter portraits, and honestly, they're high art. Her work to me is both hilarious and maybe a deep social commentary. Bon appetit, Barbara. I'm so excited to talk to you today about your meat portraits.
Oh, thank you. Thanks for inviting me. And I'm having such fun doing these. It's very therapeutic as well.
I know we look at the news sometimes and we aren't exactly happy with our world leaders and the people around them. And I think that would be an understatement. Let's start with Elon Musk's portrait. And why prosciutto? Why is that a great meat to capture this eccentric billionaire, SpaceX, Tesla, doing things with the U.S. government that a lot of people are unhappy about? Why prosciutto?
I think because I found meat is a really good base layer. And then I could use different kinds of meat, like mortadella, if I want something a little lighter. And if I want to make shadows under the eyes, then I could use some other kind of delicatessen meat, maybe spicy one.
So there's no deep thought on what meat choice. It really is just the color.
It's all about the color and shape as well for Elon, because his face is like a square or rectangle. So I found a sandwich ham was perfect for his face.
Okay, we got to take about 1,000 steps back.
Oh,
Why meat portraits of these figures? What inspires you to create this art? I love what you're doing, but how do you arrive there?
well, I'll summarize by saying I used to do hyper-realistic acrylic painting of architectural buildings. And unfortunately, I started to find my right arm weak and my hand started to shake. And I have Parkinson's disease. And I felt pretty down for 2 years. I didn't do any art. But then I got mad at the politics around me. So I started to do these food portraits. And I went from there. People were contacting me to get T-shirts and prints and note cards. So I thought, I think I've hit a nerve here, so that's how it started.
They're so weird. They're so fun. There's something that feels like they're a deep social commentary while also being so light.
Yeah.
Are you surprised that people love your meat portraits?
I am. And I'm having a wonderful time. I love making people laugh. It's so inspiring. And in fact, I involve sometimes my followers on my Instagram page, which is Maddie's Mom _ 4, the number 4U, if people want to follow me. And I would share with them here, like I did Putin. And I had 3 different photographs of Putin, and I had people vote which one I should transcribe into food art. And that was great. And then I asked, what should I use for the nose? And we start voting on it. And it's a lot of fun.
There's so much here. There's the Parkinson's. There's rising up with a new medium when your hands begin to shake. There's food as politics, humor as resistance, meat as it spoils stinks, as do so many political figures these days. There's the interactivity you have with your audience deciding on. There's so much there with just a silly meat portrait.
Oh, what I also should mention as a retired high school art teacher, I used to be head of art at Northern Secondary School, is aesthetics. What makes good art? So I try to take that to my food portraits. And if you're thinking about Deli Don, my interpretation of Donald Trump, I knew I had to use corn silk for his hair because Donald Trump's hair is a force of nature. And I think it should even have its own Instagram account. It's just a wonderful, wonderful presence.
I wonder if the U.S. government should make a new office, the office of the president's hair. I mean, it really is just this distinct, oddly amazing, and I don't mean amazing in a good way,
No.
thing.
Oh, well, it's there's so much going on there. I like the mouth as well. I don't know if you had a good look at what I used for his lips, but roasted red pepper is a really good shape maker because it's very flexible. But then I shoved a lot of leftover fat into the center of the mouth because it was left over from when I sliced around the mortadella and, the prosciutto. I don't like throwing out food, so that was a use for it.
I don't think anyone likes throwing out food. Is there a world leader that you're particularly fond of? And if so, what would you use to make a portrait of them?
That I need to think about that. I will need some. That's food for thought. I haven't got anything that jumps to mind offhand, but I'm open to suggestion.
There might be a politician out there that's likable. What about another non-political figure who's famous that you could make a portrait of that you liked?
Oh gosh, why is my brain not working right now?
Well, I think it's a comment on the state of things right now. There's so few people that we like out there.
Okay, we can go with that. Well, I'd love to do your face, David. You have a beautiful, wonderful, expressive face.
Oh, my.
I would love to work with maybe some baby broccoli for your hair, pickled onions from your eyes. And, there's a lot of potential just looking at your face right now.
There was a Sotheby's, like a famous art auction house here in New York. I think they're international. And some conceptual artist, I don't remember much about it, but I covered it on this show, auctioned a banana duct taped to something for $6.2 million. The banana went bad, but the art itself had like a certificate that you bought the original duct taped banana.
Oh.
If that piece could go for so much money, what do you think a meat portrait at its best of a world leader could make?
Well, I think $1 million is reasonable to ask for. At least go start there.
What can art say about the anger that we have towards politicians, that op-eds, that articles, that commentators can't?
Well, I know one thing is that this kind of art, not necessarily made out of food, but the caricatures, has been around since the birth of people kind, and it's been always there. Pompeii, they found caricatures of the leaders, and with an elongated nose and stretched out ears. So people are having fun with their leaders' faces since, a long time now. That's nothing new there. It's just the way I use food, which is a little different.
Do you think the ability to kind of make fun of our leaders is an important core of Western values and free speech and things like that?
Oh, yeah. It's therapeutic. You need to laugh. Could you imagine just feeling depressed and mad all the time? You'd be pretty miserable to be hanging around with. So you need to laugh. And any outlet like the caricatures, the food art, beautiful. Bring it on.
Are you laughing while you make these things? As these distorted meat-based faces come together, are you laughing to yourself and thinking, what a ridiculous thing I've done?
I am. It's kind of funny. I think if there was a fly on the wall watching me put these together, they'd be cracking up laughing. Like, I've discovered new ways of using bean sprouts. They're so expressive. I was thinking maybe for Deli Dawn bean sprouts, but I went with the corn silk hair.
Well, your work is hilarious and in a way, deep social commentary. Your name is Barbara Salsberg Mathews. You're a Guelph-based artist. Barbara, where can people find images of your meat-based political art? It's so amazing.
Well, you can go to my Instagram account, which is Maddie's Mom, MADDYS _4U, or my website, Salsberg Mathews. And Mathews only has one T because I'm the economical Mathews.
You don't like throwing out food? You don't like wasting teas?
Exactly. You got it. You got me. And I'm so glad to have been interviewed on your show. Thank you.
Barbara, thank you. After the break, we'll cover the wonder of 4 new planets discovered in our second closest neighbor, in the second closest star to Earth. An amazing discovery in a moment.
Want to be part of the last show with David Cooper? Call us and join the conversation. 1-888-505-6644. Keep listening to The Last Show with David Cooper, because the alien invasion can wait. The Last Show with David Cooper.
4 tiny planets were just found orbiting one of our closest stars. They're small, they're fast, and they're way too hot. Basically like espresso shots of planets. But it's amazing we're discovering planets now extremely close to our solar system. How did scientists find them? What does this discovery mean? That we'll cover with astronomer, astrophysicist, and grad student from the University of Chicago, Ritvik Basant. Ritvik, first of all, welcome to the show.
Thank you for inviting me.
Second of all, what piques your interest in this mysterious little star so close to us, our neighbor Barnard's star? Why interest in this star in the first place?
So this is the second closest star. The first one is Alpha Centauri system. It is a triplet, so there are 3 stars. The closest one of those 3 is called the Proxima Centauri. And we know there are 2 planets, at least 2 planets orbiting that star. Barnard's star is the second closest star, or you could say the closest single star to Earth. That is, it's just a single star there in space. It has a long list of claimed planetary detections. It was discovered, I would say, like 100 years ago. There have been multiple claims using astrometry and different methods of detections. But none of these claims stood any scrutiny. They were later shown to be false positives. So it was interesting because, this is the second closest star or the closest single star system. It's an M dwarf star, which is very small, low temperature, not super hot as sun. And, these M dwarf stars are known to host planets. It's very common for these type of stars to host planets. And because it's the closest star and it's an M dwarf, it was and given the long list of claimed detections, it was interesting to see if there are any hidden planets that would have gone undetected with previous generation of instruments.
So you found these 4 tiny planets zipping around them. Can you paint a portrait of what these worlds might be like? I know they're hot, maybe too hot to host life as we know it, but tell me about them. And how does one even find things like this in the first place?
So imagine you're driving a car and you see an ambulance zip through. And when it's coming from behind, you hear the siren in a higher pitch. And then with zap through you, it just you hear a lower pitch voice.
It's called the Doppler effect. Yeah.
Right. So we use a similar thing, but instead of sound, we study the Doppler effect of the stellar light itself. So imagine like a star and a planet orbiting a common center. Because of this planet, the star also wobbles back and forth around a common center.
And that wobble back and forth is sort of like the ambulance coming at you and moving away from you. And you can look at the light and detect from those wobbles something's there. You run it through a bunch of crazy math that nobody ever understands. And boom, you can say there's planets there.
That's right. So this is sort of an indirect method of detecting planets. You see the wobble and then you have to rule out. There are like multiple things that the star does, like the stellar activity. And there are, like, these could be natural wobbles in the light itself, which might not come from an orbiting planet. So you have to rule out every other option. And then finally you can say, oh, this is very periodic, this looks good, and this is likely a planet. So that's how we found these 4 planets. The outermost planet, planet E, is at a period of about 7 days. And it is one of the lowest mass. It's actually the lowest mass planet to be found using radio velocities, which is this Doppler effect.
So wait, a year on that planet is just 7 days?
Just 7 days.
Wow, I thought I was old at 38 years old. Imagine living on that place.
Right. And we think, so the mass of that planet is like 20% mass of Earth, which makes it more similar to Mars, which is like 10% mass of Earth. So it's like a super Mars, if you would. We don't think there's an atmosphere on these 4 planets because it's like too close to the star that the atmosphere would just be burnt out. And secondly, because these planets are so like low mass, they wouldn't hold to their atmospheres for long. And yeah, as you said, these are super hot, so we don't think that any of these would host life as we know it.
I'm no mathematician. I didn't do well in math at all in university or high school, but E is the 5th letter, and they named the planet E, but it's the 4th planet. What's the naming scheme here for these things?
Okay, so the first planet is always called planet B. Then the second planet this is an ascending order in the time of detection. So whatever planet you detect the first will be called B, irrespective of its distance from the star. Even if we discovered the outermost planet as the first planet in the system, we would still be calling it B. The second one is C, D, E, F, G, H, and so on.
Makes sense. Okay, so these planets aren't in the so-called Goldilocks zone or habitable zone, which is the sort of zone far away from a star where you could get Earth-like conditions, but they're small and rocky. Historically, when we first started finding exoplanets or planets far away from Earth and other solar systems, they were big gas giants. What can we learn about small rocky planets that are more similar to us and Mars and things like that as opposed to gas giants?
So gas giants, for sure, they would be unlikely to host life because, we call them hot Jupiters because they are too close to their sun and they are giant. And, Jupiter is a gas giant. It doesn't have a surface. So if you stand on it, you're going to just
sink. Plus the gravity is will crush you like a billion elephants or whatever. Maybe not a billion, but a lot of elephants.
Yeah, that's right. So now it's for the first, we're beginning to see these sub-Earth mass planets or super rocky planets, which are siblings of, say, Mars. And not many of these planets have been found outside solar system besides Mercury and Mars. So it's like unlocking a new level in a game. You don't know what you're going to see. But I think moving forward with these better instruments, we're going to learn a lot more things, how these planets are distributed, in orbital space and masses, etc., and their radii.
Are there any other notable eccentricities of this planet? And I don't mean that in the technical sense. I just mean that one has a 7-day year. Are there any other curious things they wobble on a very strange axis or anything like that?
So the innermost planet has a year that only lasts about 2 days. The outermost is 7 days, and our simulations show that all of them are perfectly on perfectly circular orbits because these are so compact. These are the first planet is 2 days, the second one is 3.15 or something. The third one is 4 days, and the last one is 7 days, I guess. These are so compact that even if there's a slight eccentric orbit for one of them, they're going to crash and they're not going to survive. So we think they're on perfectly circular orbits.
Interesting. So as opposed to an elliptical one, which is more, I guess, egg-shaped as opposed to circular.
Right, yes.
The instruments you used in the study have some of the coolest names, like Maroon X or Espresso. These are acronyms for who knows what they stand for. Astronomers, are you naming things cool like that on purpose, or is it just an accident?
I think we try to name them have cool names.
And I'm setting you up for this next question. Do you get to name the planets something cool too?
No. It's a nomenclature decided by IAU, I believe. So we have to name it to B, C, D, E, and whatever.
I went to school for my astronomy degree for 10 years, and all I got was a planet named A, B, C, D. I feel like they should let you name them cool names.
Yeah. I had a fight with my girlfriend. I was explaining how, why I cannot name one of the planets after her. So,
not an argument I want to weigh in on, but an argument I know you're going to lose no matter what. Well, if her name starts with B, C, D, or E, you might be in luck.
Oh yeah.
Ritvik, thanks for going over your study with me. It's amazing to discover things like this. 20, 30, 40, 50 years ago, we didn't have knowledge of even one planet outside of our solar system. Now it seems like everywhere we look, the universe is teeming with planets.
Yeah, the first planet detected with RVs, radio velocities, was in 1995, 30 years ago from now. And the semi-amplitude for that planet was 60 meters per second. And we are down to 0.2 meters per second. So you see how far we have moved in the last 30 years.
I said 20, 30, 40, 50 because I had no idea. But I knew it was around then. Ritvik, thanks for talking to me, and I really appreciate you showing up on the show.
Perfect. Thank you. Thanks for having me here.
Ritvik Basant is an astronomer, an astrophysicist, and grad student at the University of Chicago. It's Wednesday night, which means Therapy Thursdays on a Wednesday. After the break, we'll get personal and dive deep around the mental health topic of getting along with your ex during the holidays, especially with kids in the picture. It's a messy one. Stick around for tips on how to deal. I'm David Cooper. This is The Last Show. Happy Easter?
When your therapist won't take your calls anymore, there's always The Last Show with David Cooper.
Anger, frustration, involving law enforcement. Welcome to the holidays for some people. Unfortunately, not everybody gets along with their ex. It might not be you, but maybe it's your sister, maybe it's your brother, maybe it's a cousin, maybe it's a friend. We're just coming off of Ramadan. We got Easter coming, we got Passover coming, and I feel like for the big ones, like, I don't know, Thanksgiving and Christmas, it's good to start thinking about how you're going to get along with your ex if you got kids. And that's exactly what we're here to discuss with Gary Direnfeld on Therapy Thursdays on a Wednesday. Gary, welcome in and happy Wednesday night to you.
Thanks. What the hell's your name?
How do you not remember my name?
Oh my God.
What is wrong with you? Should we change the topic to banging your head and being confused?
You know, I got 3 hours sleep.
Oh.
That's what it is.
I feel like that could be a topic, how to function when you're brain dead.
That's the lack of function. But what are we talking about then?
What are we talking? We're talking about getting along with your ex during the holidays.
Okay, good. I thought you were switching topics to brain dead.
No. All right. We've all seen it. Like I've seen it. I've had friends talk about it. Sharing kids with an ex doesn't always go amazingly.
No, it doesn't. And, you know, I've been working with people for over 40 years. 30 of those years included separated parents not getting along. And, you know, as a social worker, it's a dangerous position to be in because sometimes we have to enter into these conflicts and offer opinions. I did a lot of work on behalf of the courts offering opinions. And when those two parents don't get along and your opinion doesn't side with one, sides with the other, all of a sudden you become the target too. These are such cantankerous situations. And so here you are, you're waiting for your kids to be returned. And listen, most parents, separated parents, don't even grapple with this. But there is a small number where those kids are definitely used as pawns.
It's awful. And I feel like the golden rule, I mean, I'm not a therapist. I am divorced, but we didn't have kids. But the golden rule when dealing with an ex who you don't get along with, things are acrimonious. I love that word, even though I don't know what it means. The golden rule for me is like, it's not about you anymore. You need to just keep on repeating that phrase in your head. And so does your ex.
Former Judge Harvey Brownstone coined the term, maybe he didn't coin it, but he wrote it in his book. You have to love your kids more than you hate your ex. And he's right, yet not enough people has read his book. And so when we use the kids as pawns, some look at the holiday time as an opportunity to stick it to the other parent. How do you do that? You literally withhold the kids. You don't return them, or you return them late, or you return them or you make the issue of where to return them a problem. So, you know, what is the parent on the receiving end of that misplaced, displaced, inappropriately used anger? What is that parent to do? Because many want to, you know, what's good for the goose is good for the gander. And then you have two parents making life essentially scary, problematic, unpredictable for the child. So we say to that parent, you have to let this be water off a duck's back. You have to, you know, in private, be upset with your kids, be reasonable. Sometimes you don't bother fighting with the ex, you let it go. And the backlash from that is, you know, if I'm the one always giving in, I'm empowering my ex to be nasty. And you may be, yet how are we going to advance the needs of the kid? And the needs of the kid is always for peace. Always.
You mentioned the private feeling. So like my ex did this with the kids. My ex is late returning the kids. The private feelings, like your initial gut reaction, I feel like you're always entitled to, no matter how odd they are, no matter how problematic they are, no matter how ridiculous they would be to act on. I feel like the private feelings and the impulsive feelings, you can't really control. You're entitled to them, but it's the actions that you're not entitled to.
David, absolutely. I have never, ever told a parent, don't feel what you're feeling. You have to feel what you're feeling, right? That's just being congruent with yourself. The challenge is separating what you are feeling from what you are going to do about it. You know, I have some parents that say, I'm going to phone the police on my ex.
Because they're 5 minutes late, you know?
Or, well, yeah, typically not for that 5 minutes. This can be hours or
days.
They're telling me the kid isn't coming, the kid doesn't want to come. Sorry, we don't give children that decision-making power, just like we don't give them the decision-making power of whether or not to attend school, go to the dentist.
Well, I think it depends on their age. Like if they're 16 or 17, maybe. If they're 5 or 6, no.
Right. You know, some parents have this mistaken belief, and it's a mistaken belief, that when the child is 12, somehow magically their opinion holds all sway. And it doesn't. I'm going to disabuse parents of that notion, you know, hopefully right now. It is still the parent's decision. The courts may, underline the word may, give more weight to a child's input as that child ages. And you're right. When that child is 14, 15, 16, try telling that age child what to do, what not to do. They're going to vote with their feet. Go ahead.
I just want to say you can value a kid's input, but ultimately it's the parent's decision.
Correct.
That's all.
Hey, mom and dad, I'm 16. I want to raid the liquor cabinet. Are you kidding me? I'm not going to let you raid the liquor cabinet. It is still a parental decision. So we want that, but we do realize with that teenage child, we may not always have the same power and control to manage it.
I'm sorry for replacing the Kettle One vodka with water, Dad.
You remember those days. So what we want the parent to do is to manage their anger so that it too doesn't come out through the child. We want that child to have peace. When you get the child returned to your care, be gracious, be wonderful with the child. Listen, you want to phone your lawyer to the following morning and complain through the lawyers, you know, go for it, do so. But we have parents who will phone the police. The police will not put a child in the back of a squad car and return them for you. They will just go and try and mediate the situation. But can you imagine you're 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 even, and the police are showing up at your door? How frightening an experience is that for the child? And you do have the parent on the other side at the same time telling that same child, see, your other parent just wants me to go to jail.
Yeah.
So how is that really going to work for you?
It's not. I mean, if there's like violence or extreme situations, we're not saying law enforcement isn't but in general.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct.
It's Therapy Thursdays on a Wednesday. We are here with Gary Direnfeld. You can find him at yoursocialworker.com. When we come back, we'll talk about managing expectations of your ex during the holidays, especially with kids in the picture. Wednesday night, Therapy Thursdays. I don't know what doesn't make sense about that. We'll be back with more. Therapy Thursdays on a Wednesday, broadcasting's only mental health segment intended to air on Thursdays that airs Wednesday nights. It's not confusing at all. More up next.
Want to be part of the last show with David Cooper? Call us and join the conversation. 1-888-505-6644. We're here because your heightened awareness deserves heightened entertainment. The last show with David Cooper.
I'm allowed to be human.
You are allowed to be human. We're here with Gary Direnfeld. It's Therapy Thursdays on a Wednesday. We are talking about getting along with your ex around the holidays. Ramadan just ended. We got Easter. We got Passover. And I feel like these are good things to talk about well in advance. Like what, 8 months in advance of the big one? Christmas, winter holidays. Because that's when getting along with your ex, I think, is the hardest for some people with kids. Where they've separated with their partner. Managing expectations of your ex's behavior, just like you would expect them to manage their expectations of you. I feel like that's a big one. Like, you got to let the small stuff go.
I'm glad that you pivoted to managing the expectations, because it also suggests that the parent who's being, can I say screwed over? Screwed over.
Sure. Yes, you can say screwed on the radio. That's like, there are certain words that are considered obscene, profane, and indecent, but screwed over isn't.
This isn't one of those 7, according to
George Carlin.
George Carlin.
No.
Okay. So there are those parents who know or can anticipate being screwed over, and we want you to manage your expectations. And part of that is, if you know you're going to get screwed over, plan for it. And you don't plan for it by trying to cajole your ex or control your ex, or hoping that you can back them into a corner. You plan for it by saying, okay, if I know that my ex is always an hour or 2 late on the holiday time, well, then if you say that the changeover is at noon, anticipate the kids being there for 2 and have your guests come for 2. It's that kind of managing your expectation. I also have worked with many a parent who say, you know what? The holiday time is when I say it is. So I don't need to celebrate Christmas on Christmas, Easter on Easter, Passover on Passover.
And gifts are cheaper if you celebrate Christmas the day after.
Exactly. So I have many parents where they choose an alternate day as their day of celebration. From the child's perspective, they never really feel like they're missing anything. They feel like they're gaining. They don't even feel this is their normal, and it's peaceful. And at the end of the day, that's what we want for the child. So many a child's memory come adulthood is just destroyed by what goes on between the separated parents. And sadly, I mean both parents, the one who's initiating the problems and the one who doesn't manage it very well.
People do get target fixation on dates. Like, what does a 7-year-old kid care that, Christmas was on the 25th or the 24th or the 25th, the 26th, or Passover was on the exact day? Like, what does the kid care? It's about the family, the celebration, the meal, the togetherness, whatever. But I feel like people do get so fixated on individual days. Like, I want her for that day, but only one of you is going to get her for that day.
That's right. Let it go. When you step back from that brink, think of a child's birthday. Think of being in a 2-parent intact family. The kid's birthday is coming up. Their birthday is on a Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. Rarely do you throw a kid's birthday party midweek. You save it for the weekend. The kid doesn't feel like they've lost their birthday party.
No.
It's just been planned on a day when everyone's available. And it's that same consideration. And so the degree to which, getting back to how you opened the segment, managing our expectations, when we know what to expect and we plan accordingly, we can take the weight out of the problem that a nasty ex seeks to inflict.
I did something a few years ago. I wronged somebody, and I really wanted them to forgive me and move on from it. And I was really upset. I wanted to tell them how much I screwed up. And I had this crazy letter that I wrote, this email. I knew not to even put the person's address in the to section of the email. So it was unaddressed, and I wrote down all my feelings, all my why I let myself down by, and it's like a simple apology is all the person needed. All the stuff that I wrote was really for me to sort of absolve myself and beg for absolution and beg for forgiveness. And that exercise of like writing the email but not sending it helped me grow a bit. And I feel like that's one strategy for dealing with an ex that really peeves you off.
It's cathartic.
Rather than involving law enforcement, you just write that letter with all the inappropriate stuff that you're feeling that you should not say. And you write it for you just to get it on paper. And this is an exercise that people do a lot in therapy. But I was talking about how I did it the other day. It's completely different context, but it could be useful here.
Yes. And it comes back to what you said in the first segment. You're entitled to your feelings.
Yep.
It's not that you're entitled to them. They are your feelings. And so we're never dismissive of them. Yet we recognize by your example that sometimes we still need to, in a sense, discharge them, but we want to do it in a way that's safe for everyone. And so writing that email with no one's name in the to line because you don't want to accidentally send this thing, but you can write it all out. The other thing that you can do is keep a journal of what transpires with your ex so that if you ever want to go to court, you have your own record of what has transpired. You may be able to use some of that stuff as evidence. You want to know? Ask your lawyer to be doubly sure. But very often that stuff forms a record for court purposes. So you don't take it out willy-nilly on your ex where there's going to be blowback, where it's going to undermine your relationship with the child, where your ex may say, see, it's that parent who's out of control, not me. You always want to manage your own calm, as I say it.
But Waynel, we are not a lawyer. Waynel. Wanal. Waynel.
I'll have to use that one.
Or IANAL. I am not a lawyer. It's my favorite acronym. Do parents have to pretend to like each other around the holidays when they're co-parenting and they're sharing custody of a child?
It's not a matter of pretending to like one another. It's a matter of remaining civil. And we have some parents out there that just love to goad the other parent. And if the other parent inadvertently loses it, then that parent says, gotcha. And these days, David, with smartphones, everyone has a recording device.
Yeah.
And this stuff shows up more and more as evidence in court proceedings. You don't want somebody to play gotcha with you. That is why, no matter what transpires, it's always up to you to manage your calm. Bring your best self. Don't take the bait. You can use a lot of, maybe. Well, that's up to you. Well, we'll see. You can use all these words and phrases to indicate, I hear you, but I'm not really digging in.
Don't take the bait. We've done a full topic one week on just don't take the bait and how that piece of advice, whether it's like fighting with a partner, fighting with a family member, fighting with an ex, fighting with a coworker, don't let people rile you up. And it's good advice that pops up everywhere, just like this letter writing technique. I feel like a lot of these lessons apply no matter what struggle you're dealing with in therapy, which is a good thing. I'm glad we're talking about it.
Yeah, this has been great. So, those parents who are in these situations, here are the takeaways. Manage your own calm. You're entitled to your feelings, but you can't show them to your children. We want to protect them from our big feelings so that their memories of the holidays are peaceful. Managing those expectations, you can put a plan in place that anticipates what's going to occur where you don't have to succumb to it. These are your strategies.
Mr. Gary Direnfeld is an expert in family and marital therapy. You can find him at yoursocialworker.com. Gary. Thank you so much.
Who am I?
You're Gary.
Who are you?
You forgot me in the beginning of the show. Thank you for being here on Therapy Thursdays on a Wednesday.
All good.
Up next, zooming back out into space just a little more inappropriately. Space sex. Why has NASA remained silent on the subject of whether people have done it on the space station? Well, one former NASA insider joins me up next to blow that lid. No pun intended. Have people done it in space? And if so, what would it have been like? That in a moment. This is The Last Show, and I'm David Cooper. Over the next 10 minutes, adult themes. We'll be discussing human sexuality in space using graphic descriptions. So for any sensitive listeners or parents with children, listener discretion is advised.
Taste the forbidden fruit of knowledge. The Last Show with David Cooper.
NASA tracks everything in space. Heart rates, bathroom breaks, even burps of astronauts. But one thing they won't talk about? Sex. They won't even whisper of a little space makeout. So have two people been up there floating and moaning? Is it all hush-hush or has it never happened? Last week, I talked about a former NASA insider who blew the lid on whether people have had sex in space. And now she's here. Her name is Faye Tenenbaum. She's an environmental science communicator. Laura, thank you for joining me. Let's talk space sex.
Everybody seems to want to talk about space sex the last few weeks. It's like, oh my God.
Can you blame them? Let's blow the lid off of this space sex conspiracy. Why won't NASA say anything about this? Are they hiding something dark, something secret and dirty, possibly sticky? Or are they just really prude?
I think that NASA is super duper prude. I mean, when I first started working there, my hope was to pull the stick out of their ass, but it was like a telephone pole wedged in there. So yeah, it wasn't happening. They're very uptight, and NASA's really good at censorship and keeping everybody shut down.
They're all about having like a clean, family, friendly, like we're doing a noble thing, sending people up there into space and working on satellites and probes and all kinds of who knows what, telescopes. Is it just that they have this clean image and always have?
I think that people are uptight. As far as always, when NASA first started back before you and I were born, it was innovative and creative and edgy. And I suspect something about those two space shuttles exploding and a bunch of people dying freaked them out. That was in the 80s, and I wasn't at NASA in the 80s. I was there from 2007 to 2017. But that's my guess, is that the space shuttle accidents freaked people out, and they didn't want to take any risks, and they didn't want to I understand not taking risks with sending humans around there, but not taking risks with storytelling, to me, that was more than I could bear. And yeah, it was a grind for me, always grinding up, because I wanted to be wild and encourage people to like science and have fun. And NASA was just like, meh, 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 all the time.
Based on what you saw, do you think it's likely that sex has happened in space? I know couples have been sent up there. Do you think NASA knows about it and refuses to document it? Or do you think NASA turns a blind eye? But I guess to the first question, do you think it's happened?
Well, yeah, for sure. First of all, people are people. Of course, they're in space. Come on. Wouldn't you, if you were in space for like a year or even 9 months?
I might try, Laura, but my personality is birth control, so I don't think anyone would do it with me.
Okay, so there was a couple things you said. You said that they sent couples. A lot of astronauts are married to each other, but only one couple has been in space at the same time. And people tend to confuse the space shuttle with the space station. So the space shuttle was the only time that there was a married couple. And when you go on the space shuttle, the shortest time up in space is like 3 days, and the longest is like 2 weeks, right? So I can imagine people could go 2 weeks without having sex, right? And I've actually been in a space shuttle. It's pretty small. The space station, the minimum time you're up there is 6 months, but people have stayed almost a year, like 300 days. That's a whole different story.
And there's places to hide, nooks and crannies and rooms and corners and places to...
Exactly. And people forget, because we're so selfish and America-centric here, that it's the International Space Station. So there are Italians and Russians and Chinese and Japanese. There's been a lot of different cultures up there. And of all those, NASA American astronauts are the most uptight, right? So, for example, the Italians literally sent an espresso machine to the space station so they could have espresso. The Russians bring vodka, and the Americans have orange flavored drink mix. And that basically tells you everything you need to know about the difference between the space programs. I'm not necessarily saying American astronauts from NASA are the ones who are up there getting it on. And they're probably, if I had to guess which countries it was, I wouldn't necessarily think that it was Americans.
How would it work? Like in zero gravity, or the mechanics of the do you got to strap yourself down? You bouncing off walls? Like fluids are flying everywhere. I'm worried about this mechanically speaking.
That is the one question that almost everybody wants to know. And to me, that's, I don't know, it's so obvious. Haven't you ever, I'm little, like I'm 5 feet tall and 100 pounds. I guess you call it a spinner. But like I'm always pushing myself against the walls and stuff. So where their cabins, there's astronaut cabins in the International Space Station. They're about the size of a phone booth. And literally their sleeping bags are already strapped to the wall. So you're in a phone booth with the sleeping bag strapped to the wall. Come on, you're pressing, you're pushing, you're angling. Technically, you could squeeze 2 people into one sleeping bag. But I think the fact that so many people have asked me how would they do it shows me that society is not very creative. So I'm going to just tell your listeners right now, get more creative, people. If you want to have sex, you could figure it out.
I once interviewed an astronaut early in my radio career. My producer is going to get really mad at me because I was working with her at the time, even though it was for a different employer, different station, whatever. I interviewed a somewhat well-known astronaut about how doing it with yourself would work on the space station. And he answered the question very kind of like in a roundabout way. He just said, well, you got to just be patient. You're going to be going home soon. But later, I got in so much trouble for asking that astronaut this question on the radio. So I don't get it. These astronauts are very uptight about answering anything along these lines.
Well, was it an American astronaut or a Canadian astronaut?
I plead the fifth.
But no, there's a number of astronauts. I found an article where they did talk about in space. And one astronaut, these are all men, one astronaut was saying how he got like a really hard, I think he was like, could burst through kryptonite or concrete or something. He was going on about that. And then there was another one, not Mark Kelly, the twin brother, was saying he actually facing Earth, which I think is like
kind of creepy. Yeah, that's like the ultimate voyeuristic. One thing that's always struck me as strange is NASA and the International Space Station are all very open about how pooping works in space, how the toilets work, how the recycling works, how the urine gets recycled into drinking water. Why so open about one bodily function and so secretive about the other?
I wish I knew. I know. They talk about milk duds. They talk about pooping. They talk about the bathrooms breaking, wearing diapers. But yet, yeah, nothing about sex. It's so hush hush. I mean, we're puritanical in our culture. You see a billboard about murder, but you can't show a boob. I'd rather see a boob than a dead body every day, all day.
Maybe someday NASA will finally give in and greenlight a study on sex in space. How do you think that would even work?
Well, there's been a number of scientists who've recommended doing a study on sex in space. So I think it's even like in a science journal, like all the, how a scientific article is super rigid in the way that it's not.
It would describe the mechanics.
It's not meant for the public. Yes, exactly. So there's a couple of articles saying all the reasons why we need to study it. There's been one porno who actually did sex in space on one of those hyperbolic flights where you just kind of go up and go down and get weightless for a short time.
Yeah.
But, getting the camera to film it is a whole other story. Again, it may not be NASA. Maybe it'll be a European Space Agency or something who will commission it.
Who are less prude, and then afterward they'll have their espressos. Laura, I'm so glad you blew the lid on this. I'm glad we had this discussion. Thanks so much for being on the show.
I'm glad to entertain you.
Laura Faye Tenenbaum is an environmental science communicator. If you are looking for a job, you might find yourself in a little something called the coffee cup test. And no, it's not how you take your coffee, but an employer might evaluate you based on it. What is the coffee cup test? How to pass it? More info on the other side of the break. I'm David Cooper. This is The Last Show.
The show that asks the questions other shows are afraid to ask. The Last Show with David Cooper.
In your next job interview, look out for the coffee cup test. And we're going to tell you what that means for you. And no, it doesn't mean your future boss is going to ask you if you take your coffee black or with cream or sugar. It's something else, something that reflects on you more deeply, and it has to do with your dirty mug. I'm here to discuss with Mike Shekhtman, a senior regional director at talent solution firm Robert Half. Mike, what a pleasure it is to have you on the show. And how do you take your coffee first and foremost?
Black, a little bit of black, sometimes 1-on-1, so not too sweet.
I take a little bit of milk, no sugar. Okay, I love this. There's an article about this in Fortune about a boss who uses a coffee cup test in an interview. And when you're that candidate being interviewed by that boss, it has nothing to do with how you answer the questions. It has nothing to do with how well you performed on the content at hand. It has to do with what you do with your coffee mug after the interview. Walk me through this one.
You know, it's one of those questions that it's not theoretical, but it puts people on the spot. So sometimes I always think about, it's not even about the question, but people want to see how you act in some situations. And this is one of those situations. You know, do you pick up the mug and do you give it back to them? Do you just leave it behind? What type of etiquette kind of comes to mind? So I think there's different scenarios that will come in place, and this is one of those situations that will test your experience, and this is what will show up for an individual.
And the test is as follows. You get a cup of coffee after the interview. What do you do with it? Do you leave your dirty dishes behind, assuming some schmuck is going to clean up after you? Or do you ask, hey, can I put this in what I call the dish laundry or the dirty dishes? Is there something to do with the mug so I'm not leaving behind a mess? And one boss at least says that's a really good gauge on etiquette, on whether you expect people to do things for you or whether you're willing to help out. And it reveals deep things about the way you are as a worker. I want to tell you a story. I interviewed at a tech company in San Francisco a long time ago. And it was during the boom, like 2018, I think. And they had these beautiful lunches at these catered lunches. And so I went there to do the interview, and they gave me a nice catered lunch. And when I was done with it, I picked up my dish and the tray that I had, and I said, where do I put this? I don't want to leave behind my stuff for someone to clean up. And they're like, oh, you can just leave it there. And I sort of insisted. I'm like, no, I don't want some like poor cleaning staff person to have to clean up after some entitled tech employee. Where can I put it? And they let me put the tray away. But then later in the interview, my future boss like paraded me around the office and introduced me to people. And they're like, this is David. Cleaning up his dirty plates was really important to him, and we think that's a really good quality. And I thought to myself, why did they think I did something so noble? Like, why are they praising me for cleaning up after myself? What are these people like? Like, how entitled are these other people that they don't clean up after themselves? And when somebody does, they think that person is inherently good. And I'm like, I don't want to work in that environment. So I call that the reverse coffee mug test.
And it's a good point, but at the same time, for that individual or that leader, it shows a couple things. It showed that you took the initiative. You showed that you're not lazy. It showed that you have a level of empathy for everybody at the organization, no matter what they do. And I think some leaders take that seriously, where it's like, I don't want to be your mom and dad cleaning after yourself. If you are one that's going to, again, take that initiative and carry your weight, and no matter what title you have, you can be a CEO or have a broom in your hand to clean up. That is something that people take seriously. So I don't disagree with that.
Okay, well, I didn't like it, and I probably signed an NDA, so it definitely wasn't a cryptocurrency company that rhymes with Schmoinbase.
There you go.
But yeah, I think how entitled we are and how we treat those that we have nothing to gain from speaks a lot about you. For example, I was a hiring manager at a tech company, and when incoming candidates, no matter how much we liked them, treated the recruiting department badly, like treated the recruiters in the company, the people that like weren't from the candidate's perspective, big decision makers, they were just the ones who brought him into the company for recruiting purposes. If you treated the recruiter badly, there's no way I would hire you.
Yeah. I would even take it a step further. Every time we interview individuals, and this is quite common with a lot of leaders and organizations, they actually ask the front desk individual, reception or admin assistant, how were they treated? Were they greeted professionally? What was their etiquette even coming into the actual office? Because I think that, again, shows a level of respect and courtesy, no matter who you're speaking with through that experience.
Who are these people who come into companies looking for jobs and then don't treat everybody with just some basic human dignity and respect? They're out there, but who are they and what are they thinking? Like, if you're rude to the receptionist, do you think that's going to reflect well on you?
There's a few words I can use, but I won't.
I appreciate that for our censors and for our, decency standards in broadcasting.
Exactly. But I think ultimately, I think this is where a lot of leaders and a lot of employers are looking for individuals and traits that you can't teach. And some of those behaviors is hard to break. I think that ultimately it shows up, whether it's on the first day through the interview process or through the duration of your employment. So I think this is one of those insights that you can actually uncover pretty quickly if people are choosing or not intentional in how they treat individuals, no matter, again, what they represent at an organization.
I remember early in my career, I was like a junior software developer, and this guy came in to be interviewed for a very senior role. He had a PhD in engineering and this, that, and the other. And I interviewed him and I asked him a question. They put me on the panel. I was the most junior person on the panel, and I was way more junior than the job this guy was maybe going to get. And he was so condescending and rude to me in the interview. But he got all my questions right. He was a very bright guy. And I was really nervous to give this feedback to the manager who was going to hire him. But I decided, you know what, I'll just let him know in a classy way. This guy talked down to me the whole time. And I was really impressed because my peers very much valued that. And the general consensus of this guy is he was really smart, but he was a jerk and nobody wanted to work with him. And I learned this lesson then from my boss, who said, we don't hire jerk geniuses. And I feel like if you leave your mug behind for just someone to clean up after you, you're not necessarily a jerk genius, but it could be evidence towards that. And I think that's a really good value. It doesn't matter how smart you are, how capable you are. If no one wants to work for you and with you, you're not going to be great at a company.
And we've seen that. We had a survey that was conducted that showed that 14% of managers say that their biggest hiring mistake was focusing too much on the technical skills alone. So I think this is where we continue to see that your soft skills, behavioral experience is putting a lot of weight. And this is just as critical, because I think some of those technical skills can be learned, and letters are important in some circumstances behind your name. But the other things are just as critical, especially as you get into leadership positions or move in within organizations.
Have you seen this coffee cup test or something similar to it in practice?
Yeah, I think it's quite similar, even when you're giving somebody a glass of water or walking through different situations. Again, where you want to hang out somebody's like jacket when they're coming in for an interview, and the way that process has been taken. And some people say, "Hey, they're wait for jacket to be taken," or you ask for that assistance, or even the umbrella. So there's different cues that individuals take through the process, but certainly that's one of many.
Well, I wish you a good black coffee or a coffee with 1-in-1 tomorrow morning, Mike. I appreciate you chatting to me about this one. It's a fun topic. Thanks for being on the show.
Absolutely. Always a pleasure.
Mike Shekhtman is a senior regional director at talent solution firm Robert Half. Our next guest, someone in their 30s who moved in with their grandparents for what was supposed to be a temporary amount of time, but learned deep lessons with them. Things that would seem like they were out of a self-help book, and stayed for a lot longer than she planned. Her story and what an older generation can teach you about time, up next.
Want to be part of the last show with David Cooper? Call us and join the conversation. 1-888-505-6644. Prepare to have your mind blown as we delve into the complexities of relationships, explore the cutting edge of science, and celebrate the bizarre and beautiful absurdity of the world around us. This is The Last Show with David Cooper.
Moving in with your grandparents sounds like it's temporary. Might not be something you want to do until you realize it can be perfect. There can be love, there can be breakfast, there can be Cracker Barrel. Can living with your grandparents actually teach you more than a self-help book? Our next guest moved in with her grandparents when she was 30, and we're here to discuss that. Her name is Kachelle Pratcher. She's a TV producer and business owner. Kachelle, thanks for joining me today.
Thank you so much. So excited to be here.
Let's start with the obvious and go back to the beginning of your story with your grandparents. You thought you were just crashing with them for a short period. What happened at that point in time?
So at that point, I was currently living in Florida. I had been on my own for the last 10 years. From college, I went to college in the South in Mississippi, worked there for a little while in TV. Then I moved to Florida, worked in TV there. And at that point, I was looking for a new job. And so the job that I was at abruptly shut down. And so it was like, okay, it's time to restructure, reset, do something. Let's go back home. The perfect time is to just go back home, reset, figure out what you want to do next. So it was great that a job opportunity came available in Chicago at home. And so my folks were so excited. So in my mind, I'm like, okay, this is great. This is different. Having the time to reset and just find out what I want to do next. So I'll go home for a little while. But in my mind, I just knew that I was only going to be at home for 3 months. Because I'm like, I've been on my own for so long. How do you go back moving in with your grandparents? I love my grandparents.
I couldn't imagine it.
Yeah, I love my grandparents so much. I love spending time with them, talking to them all the time. But in my 30s, you're really at a place and you're like, I'm grown. I want to live on my own. Like, how are you doing this? So I get there, 3 months happened. My grandma was so excited. She was calling me like, hey, how do you want me to decorate your room? And what all do you need when you come? They were so embracing just me being there, just me coming back and moving into their home.
How did you decorate your room? I got to know.
So she painted the room pink because pink is my favorite color. And so she had my younger brother come over and paint my room. I was so amazed when I got there and I was like, wait, you all really did that? So they wanted to make sure that I was comfortable and had everything that I needed. So
at some point, this turns from a temporary move into something a lot more meaningful. Was that like a gradual shift, or one day you woke up and you're like, no, I'm staying here a long time?
I feel like it was a gradual shift. Like I went into work and I kind of feel like before all this happened, I was very big on a time clock and doing everything by checking boxes and saying, okay, you have 1 month, you have 2 months, you have 3 months. And so as 3 months came up, because that was my ideal timeline, because I got back in August. So it was August. My ideal timeline was to be out no later than November, December. I wanted to have a place. So that way, even if I started the new year, I would be into my own apartment. And so I had a conversation with my grandma one day and she was just like, what's the rush? You don't have to go anywhere. No one's making you get out. Like, it's fine. You help us out so much just being here. And so at that point, it kind of clicked for me because I was like, she really didn't say a lot, but she said a lot. She was like, you helped me so much just being here in the morning. I may ask you if you want to come run errands with me or go to the grocery store, if you can do X, Y, and Z. And I thought of it like, oh, this is just simple things that you do for your grandparent. I didn't think of it as something being big. And then it didn't hit me till she said that. And then I heard her on the phone speaking with one of her sisters. And she was saying like, yeah, I'm just so blessed that Kachelle is here because she helps me so much, me and, her granddad. And so for me, I was like, wow, okay, maybe I need to take a step back, calm down a little bit. I don't have to be in such a rush to check a box off and be like, hey, I have to move out. Because in that moment, I'm like, wow, maybe I am really helping my grandparents in a way that I didn't realize.
You mentioned your life, the way you looked at it was about structure, checking boxes, giving time bounds to everything. I imagine your grandparents taught you something a little bit about time, how it moves, how you might spend it, and how that can surprise you. What did you learn about time from your grandparents?
I feel like I learned that you have to live in the moment. You have to be present. Everything does not call for you to be sitting here and checking off whether or not you're doing what you're supposed to be doing on a time schedule. And I think it's so interesting because I've always figured, well, I have to be at this point to be successful. Like I'm in my 30s. I should have this job. I should have this opportunity. I should be here. I should be living here. And so they really taught me about, why are you rushing? You have an entire life to live. You're where you're supposed to be. Things happen for a reason. You're here back at home for a specific reason. And so I really had to sit down and just take the opportunity to be like, okay, check yourself. Like, what is going on that your grandparents are having to tell you to, like, calm down, slow down, wait a minute. And so, like I said, I've always been so close with them because I'm the oldest grandchild and the only granddaughter. So, like, they have a very special interest in making sure that Kachelle has everything they need. They want to make sure I'm just super duper happy. And so they really wanted to know, like, why are you rushing to get out of here? No one's making you leave anywhere. You don't have to just get up and go.
But being so driven, being so checkbox oriented, I feel like that may have served you well. It may have helped you with your career, may have caused you to be more driven. How do you balance kind of the slow pace, the not rushing so much, with also trying to be successful? Like, there's got to be a balance there.
Yeah. And honestly, I think the balance has come into play over the last 3 years, if I'm being honest, since I've been at home. Because before then, it was just me on my own. And I was always like, what's next for me? There has to be something next. I always have to be looking towards, what do I want to do now? So I feel like that balance comes into place with family. And I honestly learned it over the last 3 years. And that is so crazy to say, because I'm like, I'm in my 30s. I should have known this already. And I think it's also because it weighs into the factors of, I'm in the media industry. Things move fast. And you want to keep up with everyone else. You want to do what everyone else is doing. And I think I really have to be at home to just take a step back and be like, you are tripping. Like, calm down. It's okay.
I was with my grandfather, who was a real, like, he was born in the 20s or whatever, real, like, don't talk about your feelings kind of guy, and very business oriented. And I was there with him as my grandmother was dying. And he just wanted to talk about my career because that was his language, work. And so I was complaining about my job and how hard it was, this, that, the other, because he wanted to know. And then at the very end of our conversation, he just said to me this, Dave, he called me Dave, not David, keep your head up. And I know that's such a cliche, but in that moment with his wife kind of suffering and him, it just was so powerful to me. And your grandmother said something to you, do everything from a place of love. It's kind of a cliche, but when someone says that to you on a deep level and you really hear it, those words can have a lot of meaning. Can you speak to do everything from a place of love the way your grandmother meant it?
Yeah, so she was just a woman who always wanted to see the good in everything. She was never, anytime that I would come to her with a problem or issue, if it was something I said about work, if it was something I said about just personal life, and I'm like, oh, I'm just so over this, I'm irritated. She would say, hey, you have to do everything from a place of love, and you have to be grateful for where you are. Because there's somebody wishing that they could be where you are today. And so I think she was just really big on making sure I'm so grateful and thankful for where I am in life, because you just never know. We're 1 second away from something something happening so drastic that you have to appreciate it. And so her big saying of do everything from a place of love really hit home for me, specifically when we went through the process of her dying and passing, and we didn't know. And so it just really made me put into perspective of, okay, everything that I do, I want to make sure it means something. So any interaction that I have with anyone, I always want to do it from a place of love. I'm not trying to be malicious with anything. I'm not trying to, be mean or anything like that. I always want to come off as I'm doing stuff from a place of love, like my grandma did. And everyone will always say that about her.
And your grandfather's words of wisdom, these I love. Don't sleep too long. You got to get up. I feel like that could mean something on a very deep level. Like, don't sleep in life,
Yeah. So like every morning when I'm at home now, since it's just the two of us now, he's so big to wake me up. There's no sleeping here with my granddad, like not at all. If he feels like I'm sleeping a little bit too long, because I work remote at the moment, and so he'll knock on my room door. He's like, hey, you can't sleep too long. You got to get up. Like, I don't know why you want to sleep in so long. There's a whole day out ahead. Get up, start the day, shake yourself. And I'm like, oh my God, Papa, it is so early. Like, I'm going to start the day. But he's like, you got to get moving. You got to get up, start your day. Don't just lay in bed. So he's very big on that.
Well, you can read Kachelle Pratcher's article, I moved in with my grandparents thinking it was temporary. It's been 3 years, and it's the best decision I've made in Business Insider. Kachelle, thank you for joining me today. I appreciate your time. I appreciate the conversation.
Thank you so much. I enjoyed it a lot.
Kachelle Pratcher is a TV producer and business owner. That's the show. Thank you for listening to it. I don't know. I usually have something to say at the end here, but tonight, well, I just have this. I have something to say about not having anything to say. Thanks for tuning in. We'll catch you tomorrow night. And kisses. Mwah. That felt weird, but hey, I'm rolling with it. I'm David Cooper. This is The Last Show.